Good day, everyone, and welcome to Pink Room. As you've noticed, we had a topic change today. We're going to bring on the co hostesses so that they can join us. We decided to change our topic, and we know that this is a topic that is sounding in the last 2 days. It has been hot. Facebook, for some reason, once again, is telling us on our stream that they're not quite showing the stream. So we shared the link to our YouTube channel. If you are able to share the YouTube channel link with your friends on WhatsApp, start watch parties on Facebook if you may, and let's get the party rolling. So let's start today. Our topic for today is Father's Day, healing the brokenness of daddy wounds. And we chose the name Father's Day not because it's Father's Day, but it's actually of a documentary that Kirk Franklin, very famous gospel singer, just recently dropped 2 days ago and has been making a lot of rounds around social media, and there's a lot of discussion and debate around it. So our check-in for today is going to start with this particular question. Did you watch it? How did you feel about watching it? That's our check-in question for today. Did you watch the Kirk Franklin documentary, Father's Day, a Kirk Franklin Story? And what were your feelings? What were your thoughts in general when watching it? And those of you in the chat, please share with us your comments so that we can also screen them. Remember that this space is your space also. So our check-in for today is, did you watch the Kirk Franklin Father's Day, a Kirk Franklin Story documentary? It's about 25 minutes long. What were your feelings? What were your thoughts? So let's start with the Pink Room co-hostesses, and then we'll definitely screen any comments from our audience. Before that, I was forgetting, but let me mention this very important announcement. Marisela Garcia, who is a staunch follower
Yes.
of Pink Room, she's always here, never misses one session. Well, today, she's actually at the Celebration of Life funeral services for her mother. Her mother was Norma Consuelo Rowe, and Marisela took care of her until the last end. And we want to share with Marisela that our hearts go out to her, our prayers for comfort and for peace. And we just want her to know that while it's hard to see a loved one leave, especially your mother, she can be comforted by the fact that she was there with her. She was not, her mom did not die alone in a room with strangers. Marisela was there with her until the end. So, Marisela, our thoughts and our prayers go out to you at this very difficult time. So let's go back to our check-in. Our check-in was Father's Day. The Kirk Franklin documentary just dropped 2 days ago. If you don't know who Kirk Franklin is, Grammy Award winning a gospel singer, revolutionized the gospel world. Those of us who remember him from way back when I used to do exercise to his music. I have a photo of him and his son, Carry On, because there was a couple of years ago, there was some very public fighting between him and his son. The son recorded him cursing and shared it on social media to show that other side of his dad, and it became ugly, right? So we see the yin and the yang, so to speak. So if you saw the documentary, just let us know how you feel. Just let us know how you felt about it while watching it. Just general thoughts as we delve deeper into it.
I watched it. I'm a fan. I've been a fan from the beginning. I started learning about who he was actually in Limon. They used to sell um, CDs of gospel artists on the streets of Limon. That's how I became acquainted with most gospel artists. It wasn't because of, black gospel artists, not contemporary Christian ones, which were the ones that we were the most associated. We would know Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith and Evangelina, but we did not know Kirk Franklin or Yolanda Adams or Mary Mary. So I found out who these people were walking down the streets of Limon, which is the Caribbean part of my country, in front of whatever establishment, right along the CDs of salsa and other types of singers. And so I've been a fan ever since. Best concerts I've been to, live concerts, with my best friends are Kirk Franklin concerts. So I saw this kind of gradual lead up to this, and I honestly thought that this was a movie, that he was introducing a movie. So I'm not going to say much more because this is just our check in. I saw it. I was very sad, um, and shared it with people that I thought would appreciate or needed to see it right after I saw
Thank you.
And I want to share that I first became acquainted with Kirk Franklin's work actually through another artist, TobyMac, which is one of my favorites, and in one of his very I think very beloved songs. And I that's when I first saw him. But my one of my daughters is like a mega fan. Like she sings everything that Kirk Franklin puts out, everything. She's like, mom, you have to listen to this one, right? So we're very familiar with his work. I follow him, and every time when we saw the you know the the story of him and his son having issues, we followed that because this is an artist that you've been inspired by, especially in times of difficulty. So it was definitely, it's been Kirk Franklin is he's a household name in our household. So that's, and I my reaction to the documentary, I mean, I cried. I, I connected on a personal level. So yeah, I'm thank you for sharing it with me because I hadn't seen it yet.
Yeah. Just before Shonda shares her thoughts, I want to share with everyone that we are doing a check-in. If you saw the documentary or you did not see it, we'll share the link at the end. Kirk Franklin 2 days ago dropped the documentary of Father's Day, a Kirk Franklin story. We're sharing feelings and thoughts about it. Right after Sean, I'm going to share. A.B. Richards also shared her thoughts online. I'm going to share that with her. Our Facebook line is still not connected, so we're going to ask you to share on your Facebook, share the YouTube on your Facebook, and start your watch parties. Thank you. Sean, that time is yours.
Yeah, so lover of Kirk's music, the contemporary R&B mixture, but people could relate to what the message was. So definitely enjoy him. This documentary just helped me to realize even how much more that even people who are out there with fame and fortune, their lives are also, you know, they too have experiences just like those of us who are not living in fame and fortune. So, thanks to him, he exposed some things that we know happen and exist in the world, but he showed it from the level of a person with fame and fortune. So I was grateful for that. It was sad, but grateful for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with all the comments that were made. For me in particular, um, a friend shared it with me. I saw it came up in my feed, and I was like, "Yeah, I gotta watch this at some point." But then she's like, "Have you seen this? You really need to see this." Yesterday, she texted me like twice. I'm like, "Okay, let me watch it." And I watched it, and I was like, we need to have a conversation on this because this is really symbolizing a lot of the issues that are happening in our or that have happened over generations in our community. Um, it was heartbreaking for me at several points. I like to read the comments, and a lot of people related. So this is a generational thing that has been going on that we have seen. Even if you have not experienced it, you have seen, you know of it. I definitely had the tissue box at some points. So I listen. I commend him because to be transparent that kind of way, people
Doesn't
are
happen.
usually not open to being that transparent. We would have found out maybe a couple of years down the line, but to be that transparent through the gory details of it, I mean, I commend it because I think that he was looking to liberate himself with this, but he liberated a lot more people by doing this. So I want to share the comment here by A.B. Richards. Yes, I watched it. absolutely heartbreaking. I commend Kirk for sharing this, as it's extremely difficult for males to show this level of vulnerability. So true. So very, very true. And I think maybe that's the part that was more gripping, right? That this is a male, but this is a renowned artist, a person that you call the name, everyone knows it. And to share that, the journey, was very, very true. So anything else before we move in with the check-in that you would like to share? All right. So we decided to change the topic of today's pink room in lieu of the fact that this is a conversation that is necessary, right? It's a critical conversation that needs to happen. Whether you have daddy issues or not, it is known in our communities that daddy issues are rampant, right? And it has impacted us in so many ways. So we want to talk about some of the generational impacts of daddy issues, and what are some ways that we see daddy issues manifested in our communities, and perhaps not, we can't solve it on pink room, but perhaps give some wisdom as to some things that we need to take into account. So let's talk about the generational impact of daddy wounds, right? And we see it in his story. So let's hear from you. What are some generational impacts that we definitely see in his story that occur when there is that void, that loss of dad?
So, Norca, before we do that, I think it would be wise, in case there are some who are watching who haven't watched the video, who may know Kirk Franklin, but who haven't watched the video, to give sort of a quick synopsis of what happened here. So, he is adopted. He's known. He says there's never a time he did not know he was adopted, but he knew who his biological mother was. He believed he knew that he had buried his father a couple years ago. And then in March of this year, someone that he knows, that he's known since she was a little girl, told him that she was attending the funeral of one of his biological aunts. And somebody there said to somebody else, I dated Kirk's mother. And that led to a series of rumors. You know how we are. Eventually, this person sent swabs to Kirk through this person. Kirk sent them to his doctor. His doctor called and said, this person is your biological father. So he says that he has continuously heard from people coming out of the woodwork trying to be his daddy. So this was just another one, but there was something about how it came through to him and resemblances that people who know them both saw that made him, he went ahead, sent it, and realized that, in fact, this person was the father. And then what we're seeing is, because he's recording his new album and he was doing a behind the scenes recording, the real life reaction of him learning that this was his biological father, and his unfolding conversations with key people in his life, trying to answer the question of, did you know, is it real, what now? And that, that's what the documentary is about. So just wanted to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page in regards to what we're talking about as we move forward into our pink room today.
Thank you, Tricia. And we're going to drop the link at the towards the end of the show. If you have not watched it, you can look it up on YouTube. It's getting quite a number of views. But yeah, in a synopsis, thank you for that, Tricia. That is basically the documentary. He had been led to believe that two men were his father before this third one, which had concluded by DNA is his dad. Mm-hmm. Generational impact. And I think we see that in the video where his son has a troubled relationship with him, confronts him, is like, hey, it's been 2 years, you haven't answered my text messages, and now you're calling me to this meeting. And he said, listen, I'm going to share something with you. And the response from the son is, I'm already feeling pain. I'm like, that says to you that the impact of daddy wounds is painful, and and the pain does not end with you trying to hide it.
No, and when you see how Kirk received the news, he starts walking around the room. He's not can't stand still. He's walking around the room trying to process. So you see, he's one of those people who process with energy, kinesthetic energy. That's how he processes. So he's walking around. When his son receives the news, he does the same thing.
Yeah.
He stands up
Yeah.
and starts walking around, right? So I have seen in my own family how different behaviors, even physical mannerisms, my sons have from family members they have had zero connection with.
Yeah.
Things like how they sleep or how they bite their cheeks or things like that they haven't been with these people ever. It's not learned behavior.
Right.
And it's not necessarily color of hair or texture of how curly it is. It is behaviors. And you're like, how is it that you're behaving exactly like this person? You've never been in the same room. So the generational impact of everything that is about us goes so beyond what is visible and what we have ordinarily thought are things that we inherit. And then adding on to that, then that we don't, the fact that we may not know how to behave towards the next generations because the earlier generations have not known how to behave with us. And that there has to be a point where somebody says, no matter what the earlier generation, I'm going to learn what I need to do because it stops here.
Yes.
And I'm going to do what is necessary because this is where it's going to stop. I'm not going to let what I suffered, knowingly or unknowingly, continue into the next generation.
Right. So let me go back to this idea of, because we're going to get into what are some things that we need to do to break the cycle. Let me go back to, and I like that you brought that up because I believe DNA don't lie. Right? As you said, we don't have to be in the same room. We don't have to be brought up under the same roof, but there are just things about the way mannerisms, different things that hey, you are related. There's that bloodline is strong in there, right? So when we even if we try to hide that or put that away or say it's non-existent or ignore it, whatever we may try to do, that bloodline is there. So there is going to be an impact whether that person finds out or not, because that void is there if they don't find out, right? That void is there. But I also think that besides the pain of that, of maybe that broken line, if there's no relationship, I also think that the psychological and the emotional and the stigma around daddy wounds, which is something we don't talk about a lot, is greater than what we want to let on to, right? I mean, we specialize in women because we're women, but even for men, as we saw in this, that impact, that emotional, psychological impact of not having that. Let's remember what Kirk Franklin said. I would give away all my awards just to have someone call me their son. That stuff shook me.
Yep.
Because a lot of us are looking for the awards, but he was like, I'll give that away. I just want a daddy, right? Yeah. So that emotional part is strong. I don't know, Shonda, Teresa.
Yes. Well, wow. I wish I didn't speak from experience, but I can tell you that the generational wound is, not being able to handle abandonment, because it that's what we're dealing with. That's the trauma, right? The trauma of abandonment. I was 3 months old when my father left my teenage mother with me in her arms, and never saw him again. I didn't know that, of course, until I was older. And but I can tell you that I grew up with a lot of anger. That everything that I ever went through, I would tell myself, if my father would be with me, this wouldn't have happened to me. And I went through, a lot of, physical, verbal, and sexual violence in my life, unfortunately. And all of that I would blame on my father because he wasn't with me. I would think, and I relate so much to, I was never adopted, but I can relate to his experiences of, the desire to know who your father was, because I would think to myself, man, I could be walking down the street and walk by my father and not know who he is.
Yeah.
I had no idea what he looked like. I didn't find out what my father looked like until I was 30 years old. And that's because somebody gave me a picture. He had already died by that time. But, generational wounds, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They handicap you as a human being. When your father is not in your life, it is a handicap. And for my personal experience, it's only been God's love as my Heavenly Father that I have been able to, get to this point, half sane that I hope I am, and because when I started going to therapy, I remember the therapist was like, how did you haven't done so bad in your life, because I wasn't on drugs or an alcoholic, or because I didn't have a lifestyle that was reflective of all the anger and resentment and that I had experienced throughout my life. But the generational wound is incredibly devastating. It destroys you. It destroys you. And I don't know how other people do it, but I've hung on from a thread to God's love for me. And that's the Father's love that I've known,
Wow. Teresa, this is powerful. Shauna, go ahead, because I'm just
no, go ahead before you.
Yeah, Teresa's words of how it handicapped her, and I think about things that he said about walking into a room and wanting to belong, right? That is feeling that you are not part of something. I think about the fact that this man is a gospel artist. He could probably make a lot of money else doing something else, because he's not a great singer, but a great musician. Okay, Kirk Franklin, forgive me for that, but it's true. Not a great singer, but a great, he's a gifted musician.
Yes.
Gifted musician. So he could be making a lot of money in the secular world. But as Teresa, he held on to God. Maybe that was the saving thing, that lifeline for him. Wow.
And I think that, so I'm not, sorry, Shonda, go ahead.
Oh no, let it flow, let it flow. I'll come along. Go ahead.
When you hear his music, when you're a fan like we're fans, you've seen snippets of this. Yes. That Imagine Me song, right? Yes. What my mama said or what my daddy did. You've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, you when he talks about going to the choir so I could sit by you, found a magazine, and you can see how his life in so many different places would have gone so many different ways.
Yeah.
And that God found him.
Yeah.
In his case with that piano. Teresa, in your case, I don't know how directly.
Well, I needed to excel in everything that I did, right? I as I shared with you earlier, I connected on so many levels when he says, I wanted people to like me. So all my life, I have been working on that, making sure that people like me, that I am the best at what I do, because all the praise, and that was very hard to come to terms with, to realize that, I needed that. Like I needed to be, praised. I needed to have other people's attention, because I was so empty, and when you talk about, I just want to go back to that generational wound question that you had, because it's legit. When I saw him with his son, my eldest, my two eldest children are girls, and the generational wound that I inflicted on them, because before when they were growing up, I still hadn't gone to therapy. And, I didn't do a great job. I lost myself in going to school and wanting to be, somebody academically recognized, and I wanted to be the best professional. I wanted to be, all these things, because that's where I got fed, and my kids, and I see him and I know that, like those problems that he has with his son, I'm like, that I have problems with my eldest daughters, because I hurt them when they were little, when they were growing up. I didn't give them the attention, the time, the presence that they needed, because I was so needy, to fill my void. I needed to fill that void, and I didn't know that what I really needed to do was, to let myself be loved and love these children, because I was too hurt to understand how my father's abandonment had really just, crippled, and handicapped me to love my own children. And so I see him in that relationship with his eldest son, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's exactly when not growing up with a father who's loving and present and who gives you the confidence that you need, that's what it does to you. It becomes a generational, trauma, as he was talking about, also about being institutionalized.
Yeah.
In trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
It that, and unless you consciously, you wake up at some point, for me, it was understanding that I really needed help, and that it took me a long time. I mean, I didn't get to that. We talked about it a couple of pink rooms ago. I was in my early 40s when I finally was like, I don't even, I need to get myself to someone who can help me with this, because I have not been able to resolve it. Right. I was losing my family, my relationships, and I didn't want to be alone. I didn't want to be, left without those connections, but I had no idea how to make them, because I had no idea.
Teresa, what you were sharing here, as usual, but in particular for this topic, is so very powerful, because you're giving permission to women who have that deep daddy wound, but you're also giving us a window into that impact.
Yeah.
Right? Because oftentimes we don't understand. People act in ways and we're like, I don't get it. Why is she like that? Or why is he like that? And we're not realizing that this is coming from way back. Sometimes, as you said, I didn't even realize it. I didn't even know it, right? It took therapy for me to realize that, oh, wait, something is up here, right? So again, thank you for depositing that. Very real, very clear, very transparent. And yes, it is a window into that generational impact that we're talking about. Shonda, I'm sorry, we keep cutting. Go right ahead.
Oh, look, you all flowed wonderful.
Jump in, Shonda.
You all, it was just thought provoking, and you all have said probably some of the things that I would have shared, just on what that how that the daddy wounds do impact generations. And I was just sitting here thinking and listening to all of you. It's actually a thread that's keeping us together.
Yeah.
Though it is a wound, it is also an attachment. And we can see, I'm sure all of us in this pink room can see it play out. You can see, be it a gold, red, white, or blue, whatever color that thread is, you just see it. It's who decides to hold on to that thread so that it binds us. And I just think of it just, I don't know, it's like I'm lost for words, but I'm trying to see how it just doesn't only just spill out with the immediate impact, but it just gets larger and larger and larger and larger, that it just encompasses so much. Just think about, we were saying earlier about how the sister may know his aunt. Look at that. It just takes it to another level of generational, wound. I mean, daddy wounds.
The face.
Shauna, thank you for that, because that's another aspect that we haven't yet talked about in public. That when we talk about generations, it's not just the ones that are that is not just the father, the son, the father, the daughter,
Right.
but the aunties, the grandmas, the mamas, the
Yeah.
uncles, the other people who are around, who may sometimes be complicit because they know something, but they don't feel, listen, it's not my place to say, right? But
Yeah.
they're aware, and in many ways they're also impacted by, because they're forced to carry a burden or a secret or whatever to protect another person. It's a deep level of trauma that is not so much long, but it's also very wide.
Wide,
When we think about it, that's an excellent point. Our viewers are very quiet today, and we know it's a tough topic, but we still like to hear from you. So go right ahead and chat in the space. We'll screen your.
And we miss Maricela, because sometimes Maricela comes in with a comment that helps the viewers follow up with more.
We miss her.
So we miss her.
Right. Yeah, but I don't know if anyone has anything else on this segment, or we can jump to the next segment. Anything else you would like to share? So this next segment, we just wanted to share with you some of the things that we are aware of. And Teresa said a lot that is placed at this slide. One of the reasons why we wanted to place this slide, because we want people to be able to identify, right? It's one thing to talk about the issue, but then how do you identify it? And when we talk about daddy wounds, we're not talking just about the dad that you didn't, that in the case of Kirk Franklin, he thought two were his, but they were not. And then he found out, so he had this absent father, right? So at one point it was like an absent daddy, but actually was a non-existent daddy. We know the cases of, like Teresa said, he had died, non-existent in her life. And she only has a photo, right, to hold on to right now. We have those daddies that are physically there, and they would tell you they provide, but emotionally they're missing in action. The wounds are just as deep because they're not contributing to that emotional, psychological development. We have the abusive, the violent dads. We have the punitive, the religious dads were religious zealots, the critical dads, you never do anything good for them. They're always about punishing you. All of these create daddy wounds, right? And we wanted to showcase that so that we're able to realize that it's not just the dad that's not there or is absent, but some of us carry daddy wounds from dads who were there but not healthy.
I think that's important for us to codify right now, to stop just for a second, to recognize that just because a father is living does not mean that there will be no daddy wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes we believe that because there is someone who walks in the shoes of a father visibly, we believe that that person is a dad, that that person is really a father. Whatever role we play in that child's life, we may be mistaken in believing that because there is someone physically there, that they're actually playing the role of a dad. And that even as the people who love these children, we need to be careful to not subject them to abuse because we see someone there to say, well, one is better than none. And we had this conversation in Pink Room Way, one of our first Pink Rooms. But I'm just bringing this up in this context to say that it is don't be fooled by appearances. If you see a child that is going through some stuff, do not, say, oh, well, someone at home is there to take care of it. One, two, it could be that you see nothing wrong with this child. That doesn't mean that this child isn't going through stuff because one of these things exists. And that child, like Teresa said, can be outwardly excellent. Doesn't mean they're not carrying wounds.
Yeah.
Jump in here. One of my favorite authors, recent favorite authors is Dr. Gabor Mate. And he talks a lot about childhood trauma And one of the things that he shares in one of his books, it's on ADHD. That was one of the recent ones that I read. And he talks about how, you know, we think, as you were saying, Tricia, that a child who's adopted and is, you know, cared for and loved, and, you know, I mean, even might even be pampered, right? You're like, oh, they're going to do well because they're going to have, you know, somebody who's loving on them and taking care of them and providing, and they're better off. But he said, it doesn't matter how well that child has it. The trauma of abandonment will always follow them, because there is that sense, I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And I know that because look, when I was growing up, my father was from Jalisco in Mexico, and his family was a family of means. I mean, they had property, they had, you know, clothing factories. When I found all this stuff about my dad, you know, because of course because when I was around 10 or 11, somebody from the family told me, that man that that you call dad, he's not your dad. So they were talking about my stepfather at that time. And I mean, I can tell you that I felt like numb for weeks.
Yeah, people really wicked.
Find out that you know, that wasn't my father, because I had called him father, you know, since I was a child. And you know, to find out that wasn't my father was, of course, devastating, you know. But you know, I started thinking, ever since that, from that moment on, I kept thinking, you know, well, why didn't he stay? Why did he, you know, why did he leave me? You know, what's wrong with me? You know, and of course, you know, everything that happened to me as a child that was traumatic, you know, I kept blaming him. And so I grew up resenting, you know, him as I grew up hating my father, my biological father, right? I mean, my father, period. I grew up hating him because he left me, and because everything bad that happened to me was his fault. Because if he would have stayed, I wouldn't have, you know, gone through all of the violence that I experienced as a child. And all I could think about was, I'm going to one day show up at his doorstep, and I'm going to say, I'm Dr., you know, Alvarez, you know, and just wants you to know, and I didn't need you for anything, you know, I didn't need you. You know, look at me, you know, look at all I am, and I didn't need you for anything. And that was what pushed me all of my life. And I can say that now without breaking down and, you know, and just losing it, because I've understood that, you know, my therapist said, you know, that's what pulled you through. Now that's a tool that you use. It's no, but you can't, you know, it's no use of anymore. You have to let go of that so you can be the person that you need to be and that you want to be. And but that was, it was a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, and to this day I can tell you that even though, you know, I've been through a lot of therapy, and I'm happier as a human being, and I appreciate my life, and I appreciate the fact that he gave me his sperm, and I have the life that I have because he gave me that. It's still, you know, there's still that pain, you know, maybe not as pronounced as, you know, it was in the past, but there's still that pain that he never got to, you know, hug me, that he, you know, I never got to hear him, you know, share words of wisdom with me. You know, there's like all of those things that I didn't get to experience as his daughter. And you know, that's always going to be with me, you know, to my last breath. So I think that it doesn't, what you're saying, Tricia, is so valuable because we tend to think, oh, they could have it worse.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mhm.
they could have it worse.
Mm-hmm.
They could have been in a worse situation.
Mm-hmm.
They should be thankful for what they have.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry, but you know, that is that one, I think, connection that we like. That connection is the most valuable connection that we can have.
Yeah,
Because we all want to be connected.
that's
And
right.
when you don't have that, there's a loss. Because I see my sons and my daughters. Unfortunately, as you all know, I lost my first husband, who's the father of my first two children. And I mean, I see my girls suffering because their father didn't abandon them technically, right?
Mhm.
But they didn't grow up with him either because he died.
Mhm.
And then I see the boys and how different, the how they're growing up, because they have somebody who's constantly like, I love you. You
Mhm.
oh, you're so handsome, you're this, you're that, all those things that your fathers say to you, right, when you're growing up. And it's so those are things that it doesn't matter how many people tell you, oh, you're great, you're awesome. You always wanted to hear it from your father.
Teresa, this is such a deep realization,
Yeah.
and it doesn't in any way, I believe, discourage folk from doing the good thing of adopting children, standing in.
Mhm.
But we need to be mindful, those of us who do, that that void is there. And while we are well intentioned and we should do all that we can, we should not feel resented because that child in some way still feels the need to find out, to reach out, to connect. I believe we were created that way, right?
Mhm.
And oftentimes, oh, but they had it so well. They were adopted, da, da, da. But that thing is still there, right? That need, that bloodline, that DNA, that whatever that is, that need is still there. And thank you for bringing that. I also added on the slide the unfaithful dad. I know dads who are chronically unfaithful, and it impacts in many ways because, believe it or not, your daughter or your son start to wonder, is something wrong with us?
Mhm.
That you would choose another woman from her mother or other kids, something is wrong, and it creates this deep wound also. I don't know if anyone would like to talk a little bit about that, but oftentimes we don't connect that, but that is a daddy wound that is seen because it goes with the idea of rejection, right? You're choosing these other folk over there, but you have us here.
I'm not, what I'm about to say is not directly addressing the unfaithful dad.
Mhm.
And I want to make that clear because of what I'm about to say. So you all know I'm divorced. I was married for 20 years. All my three sons are from the same dad. There was trouble early on. There came a point where on a Saturday morning, it was just too much. And I decided that I could not do it anymore. So I got in the car with my sons. And as we were driving off, I said, we're not going to make it. Your dad and I aren't going to make it. And my second son was sitting beside me. I'm trying to be so careful because I don't want to,
Right.
but I think it's important that I say this. Um, and he looked at me and tears started coming down his face, and he said, "But who will I?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "If you and dad aren't married anymore, I won't be." And he said his name. And in
Wow.
Latin America, we use both last names. The dad's last name first, the mom's last name next. And he said his full name with both last names instead. If you are not together anymore, then I won't be. And he said his name, and then he said, who will I be?
Wow.
That's why I didn't get a divorce till I got.
Wow.
That's the reason.
Wow.
Because I understood what he was asking me,
Mhm.
even though he could only say it in the words he could say it. Because we as adults, you don't lose your name. You're always gonna have your name.
Mhm.
That's not what he was asking. He understood the separation as something different, and he was 9, 10 years old, so well aware, understood, saw lived in the house. So it is so core to a child's sense of being
Yeah.
Yeah.
that the
Mhm.
absence, real, as in a living or dead person, or man-made because of circumstances, it is so core to a child's sense of being. I see it in my children. I see it in students, and we see it. That is why we decided that while this was a topic that was so fresh, that had so many people reflecting on it, crying about it, thinking about it, this was the time for us to bring it to the pink room, because every topic we have is important, but this topic now, because of the exposure, the combination of how secretive we are as communities and how we do not support therapy as communities, it's like a perfect storm
Absolutely.
where it's happening. We don't want to talk about it,
Right.
and we
Well
don't want to
said.
let you get help so you
Well
Exactly.
can
said.
deal with it. And we try to act like it's not
Exactly.
happening.
Yeah.
And we
Yes.
glorify lifestyles where it's not there. It's the perfect storm. It is exactly
Yeah.
what is being used to destroy. So what the impact is of it? Destroying
Yeah.
our communities
Yeah.
now, and as we move forward.
Yeah.
Preach.
She said, go ahead, Shonda.
Oh, I just had a moment where I just said, "You better preach."
Hmm. Yeah. This is the perfect segue
Mm.
to this, Tricia. Thanks for that great introduction. So can this cycle be broken? Because when we talk about generations, we're talking about hundreds of years. Let's first locate the fact that, and I think Kirk Franklin said in his documentary. Let's talk about slavery. Let's talk about what happened to natives when their land was colonized, taken over, settler colonialism. Let's talk about the forced separation of families, they taken away of their cultures, of everything. All of this is wrapped up in that, right? And we are now still living in the pain of these separations.
Absolutely.
Can this cycle be broken? Can this cycle be broken?
Um, I I like to speak to that. I have hope that it can. You know, I think that one of the most important things that we can leave to our communities is, the I think the confidence that getting help does help, and you know that they see that our lives are not perfect. And I think, uh, this video that was presented to us really comes to show a couple of things, and one is that uh, this is everybody's life. Yeah, I mean, not everybody in the same way, but every single human being goes through some trauma.
Mhm.
Okay, yes, not everybody was adopted, not everybody, I mean, not everybody's Kirk Franklin,
Mhm.
but all of us in some way, shape, or form are going through our own struggles. And when we think of, I really like that we're talking about this particular individual, because when you see somebody like Kirk Franklin, who is devoted,
Yeah.
in every aspect of
Yeah.
his, to uplifting
Yeah.
spiritual experience, you think that this man doesn't have issues, right?
Right. And then also a high achiever, Teresa.
Yes.
A high achiever.
Mm-hmm.
And that he doesn't make mistakes, right? Or that he doesn't say bad words, right? That he doesn't, all of these things. And we have to, one of the things that we have to realize as a society is that, getting help doesn't mean that, you're going to be fixed. And I hope that we,
Yes.
that message loud and clear. It doesn't mean that you're fixed and you're perfect. It just means that you want to be better, and one of the little notes that I have for myself on my daily reminders is not perfect, but better. That's what I want for myself. I want to remind myself that I'm not perfect, even though, I used to tease with my students all the time, right? Because we talk about how an assignment should follow these directions, and and then I would be like, it's okay, you do your best, right? Because nobody's perfect. I'm pretty close, but I would always tease them about that. But it wasn't, really, I always wanted to be perfect, right? I wanted to be perfect because I had that emptiness inside of me that pushed me to say, I have to be perfect in order to be loved and appreciated. Like, if I didn't do everything at home, like, people would comment to me, other women, Teresa, oh my goodness, how do you do it? You're such a superwoman. You do this, you do that. Look at your kids. They walk the street. Look at their uniforms are ironed. Their food. They have everything cut. I mean, I was running myself ragged. To be a perfect mother, a perfect wife, a perfect professional. Like, I had to have everything under my control.
Wow.
Everything had to be under my control, because it was the only way I found a sense of control. I don't even know
Validation.
A validation that I was able to.
You're worthy.
Worthy. There you go. That I was worthy. That because of I did all these things, right? And if I didn't exist, everything, like, it wouldn't be as good for everybody, because
Wow.
I have made all these, I had made myself indispensable. And
Wow.
I that's where I got my validation, doing until one day my body's like, we're done.
Yeah.
We're done. You know what? When that happened, it was in the summer. I was teaching a class as an adjunct professor at La Sierra University, and I was taking a class back to back morning, like the morning I opened my eyes to the moment I went to bed. I was like constantly reading, grading, preparing. It was 2 weeks that I abused of my body, mind, and soul. After that, I had a breakdown, a physical breakdown. I ended up in the hospital. And it was after that that my journey began, after that. And, that was like in August, 11 years ago. That was August, 11 years ago. And in December, my teenage daughter says, she comes into my room and she's all like crying. And the moment I saw her walk in, I knew what she was going to say to me. And I asked her, I said, are you pregnant? And she said, yes. And she couldn't stop. She just cried. That moment has defined the rest of my life, because it was in that process of accepting the fact that I did not have control.
Yeah.
I was not in control.
Wow.
That my kids woke up with me, went to school with me, came back home with me. I had my perfect fortress around my perfect children did not work.
Wow.
And it wasn't until then that I realized that I needed help. Before that, I had not really. I was like, I took care of business.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know. I went off on a tangent, but
No, no, no. I think this is great because I think the quick recap for this question would be, you said it. Go ahead.
Cycle be broken.
Mm-hmm.
I pray to God that it can.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if not, then my faith is of no use to me. Because I need to know that it can, that my kids, that my children, my grandchildren's life can be better, that they can be better human beings. So I pray to God, and my hope, my faith, my actions now all go in that direction, that they will have a healthier view on life, that they will be healthier human beings, so they can replicate that. And even though they went through a lot of trauma before before I started going to therapy, that they themselves will look for the help that they need when they're ready to receive it, right? Because I can tell my kids, hey, go to therapy, because I messed you up at the beginning of your life. I messed you up. You need to go to therapy. I know they're gonna go when they feel that they're in a place that they need to take that step. And I just pray for them, because I love them, and I want them to be better, not perfect, but better every day.
You know, Theresa, we're going to the next segment, but I think I want to say here that in my knowing you for all these years and hearing bits and pieces of your story, I do believe that you have broken the cycle, right? And I think the beautiful thing is you took accountability. You did not wait for them. Like, okay, they're more educated. They're going to know better because it's a different generation. I think the fact that you did the 360, which to me is early in the process, right? I do believe that the cycle has been broken, Theresa Alvarez Diaz.
And let me,
the cycle has been broken.
Let me add something there. It's
Yes.
not only been broken in your family. Today is just an example of how you've helped this cycle to be broken in other families.
Absolutely.
Because what
Amen.
you're doing today is breaking cycles, and what you
That's right.
consistently do with For Real Women International, which is the space I know you in. I know you do it in your job, but and For Real Women International, what you do in this space has helped to break cycles already, not only in your family, but in others. And I think that if there's only one thing that we can say that can be called good out of any suffering we go through, is that suffering helps to tell somebody else, I've been where you are, and I'm here today.
That's right.
And if I could go through it, you can too.
Absolutely.
And the way God saved me, He can save you.
Absolutely.
Sometimes there's nothing else that we can call good. People always want to say, oh, at least, and be happy that, and por lo menos, like we say in Spanish. But if there's only one thing, because there's some things that are so messy, so hurtful, that there's absolutely no way that you can say there's anything good that can come out of it. So there's only one thing, is this ability that you have to connect. You don't know with how many people out here who needed to hear this, just like who knows who Kirk thought was even gonna see this,
right?
That is being connected to it. I want to say just one more thing about the therapy. When you watch that video, please do not believe that Kirk Franklin is so smart and so whole within himself that he knew exactly how to have these conversations. This is the role of a therapist. We will sit with that therapist, and that therapist will say, let me prepare you for the conversation with Rick Hubbard. Let me prepare you for your conversation with your son.
And
it
your
came
mom.
into my consciousness with that conversation with his son, because
Mhm.
he walks in with to his son knowing this is gonna be war,
Mhm.
knowing his son is ready for him.
That's
And
right.
the minute he says, "I gotta talk to you," and it's gonna be painful, his
Mhm.
son just rolls the bar
Feel
down.
the pain already.
Listen, the son says,
Mhm.
"I am your son. I am responding to you in bars, not
Mhm.
only in normal language, in
Mhm.
bars. I'm letting
That's
you
right.
know."
That's right.
Mhm.
And for Kirk to be able to sit and say, "I understand that, and we're gonna deal with that. But I have to tell you something now
That's right.
that is
Mhm.
going to be painful. I need to know, are you able to receive it?" That is coaching from a therapist.
Absolutely.
He went to those conversations having had help, a script, for him to be able to stay on script and not lose it. He
Yeah.
had to
Absolutely.
have been coached by a therapist. So please, when we say
Yep.
therapy is important, it's not because we're all of a sudden not, you know, turning away from God. No, these are the things that a therapist, if you're going to break the cycle, you need the help. You
Mhm.
have no, oh, it would be nice, must be nice to have all that money to have a therapist on speed dial.
Mhm.
Nowadays,
Mhm.
you can get therapists that look like
Yeah.
you, sound like you,
You
and
can get it at speed dial nowadays.
speed dial,
You can.
virtual,
Virtual.
Virtual.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
$10.
Mhm.
Yes.
No excuses.
Finances are
Yep.
no longer an issue. If you
Yep.
haven't found out, please just go online,
Yeah.
Google therapists that look like me that are for free in my city,
Yeah.
virtual, and it'll
Yeah.
bring up some names.
Yeah. You know, Tricia, I'm glad that you brought this up because when he went to meet his aunt, and
Yes.
the way the aunt treated him, like, get your da 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 out of here. And that was grounds to, like, listen, woman. And he was like, okay, I'll be in the car until she comes. And then he's like, inside the car, he said, here you go, treating me. I'm a 53-year-old. But he didn't blow up. He could have blown up. I said, yeah, this man is in some therapy.
Yeah.
Yep.
He recognized it. And I want you to
He controlled himself and he
He was
controlled the
prepared.
situation.
He
Like,
was
okay, these
prepared.
are my boundaries.
He was
I am not going in
prepared.
until, and notice she backed off. She's like, okay,
Yep.
all right,
But he was prepared. It's
yeah,
not only
yeah,
in control. He was
Absolutely.
prepared. Being prepared lets you be in control. Being prepared
absolutely,
says, when she says this, what are you gonna do? I'm
exactly,
gonna do this. If she
exactly.
says this, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna. That's
Mhm.
preparation.
Yep. I want
Yeah.
to share. Stephanie
Teresa
Pinnock
quería
is
decir algo,
here.
¿no? Teresa quería decir
I
Oh,
algo.
just
sorry, Teresa. Go ahead. Go ahead.
that when he was saying that, and that when I shared with you that this was just like this was too real for me, his whole story. When he was there saying that about feeling like a 10-year-old boy and he was already
Mhm.
feeling anxious. This is a woman that he could, I mean, the man is fit. You
Yep.
know, he doesn't have to be scared of her, but understand that when you come up from that traumatic abandonment place,
Yes.
you know, you're still that, you are that child that's scared, you know, and I am almost his age. I'll be 53 in January. And I want to tell
October.
you that I know exactly what he's talking about.
Yes.
Feeling that PTSD, right? That trauma, because that's what parents do for you.
Exactly.
They create the sense of confidence. And and this is one thing that, ladies, being in your presence has really allowed me to glean that for you. I see the way, Norca and Tricia and Shonda, you guys stand up in front of a group. Like you have this innate confidence about yourselves that, I mean, it to me, coming from a different place when it comes to that, to me, it's so attractive. Like I'm like, that is so beautiful, and I know where it comes from, and I praise God that they're, families that have made it a point to make sure that their children, know that they're loved, even if it's imperfect and everything, but that they and
Mhm.
and so I want you to know that that experience that he's going through is something that unfortunately, is so real and so raw for those of us who have,
Yeah.
the trauma of abandonment.
Yeah.
Um, that we can't stand in the same confidence. I mean, unless we've gone through a lot of the scripting and a lot of the, the therapy, right? And I praise God, that the therapy has been, that for me. It's really, really, but as much as I am a more confident person now, I
Mhm.
can tell you that it is not that innate confidence. It is confidence that I have trained.
Right. Right.
They're very different, but praise God that even though it wasn't innate, that there's still an
That's
opportunity
right.
to learn it, right?
That's right.
So,
That's the point.
and and that was, I can't even tell you
Yeah.
how real that was. Mhm.
That's the point. I'm going to, before we go to the last segment, I'm going to screen some comments here from Stephanie Pinnock. She said, I can relate to this topic. I can remember a point in my life when I could not speak about my physical present but emotionally absent father, who I love very much, without crying. This is deep stuff, Stephanie. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. The cycle was broken for me when I wrote him a letter. Excellent. There's therapy there too. I wrote him a letter in 2018. We both cried, and today I no longer cry. The wound is healed, even though I still remember. Because of my personal experience, I am very open with my children about this topic. And then she says, thank you, Teresa and Tricia, for sharing. Powerful indeed. And thank you, Stephanie, for sharing that. Because that's another great way. She confronted it with that letter. The two of them came together, cried around it, made peace about it. I think that was very powerful. Thank you for sharing that with us, Stephanie. We appreciate that. Now, our final segment is takeaways. What do we say to our grandmas or mamas or aunties and our sisters, which in this particular documentary, we see them predominant here in so many ways, which we wish they were not, but they are.
Yeah.
So what are we saying to them?
I guess we want the truth, right? Be real with us. For me, not knowing that that person who, I called father wasn't really my father. That was, I don't know. I don't even know
Yeah.
how to describe that. But I think we want our mothers, our aunties, all these women that are our safety net, because they are the ones that are nurturing us and everything, to be real with us. Obviously in a loving and caring way, and maybe with a script from the therapist, right?
Yeah.
But I'm still in shock, and really the part that I was just like, not understanding, and maybe with you can give me some light in this. What are your thoughts on the mother not accepting? Like, she's like, no, I swear to you that this is not your dad. I'm not, I didn't follow that. I don't know. I had to look at it again, and but what was that all about? Like, if she's got the evidence there, what is this? Is this kind of like what the discussion that we were having backstage? Because I came in a little.
It. That's exactly it.
So what's up with that?
Exactly it.
Light on that.
So we have always promised that we're reeling Pink Room and unscripted, and we do not prepare our statements to agree with each other, or we do not force anybody to say party line. So whenever you're in the Pink Room, you are in the honest, real, conversation. And a few minutes before we started, we were having a conversation about the difficulties we had in watching, especially the reaction of a mother that cannot give her son this. Give him this, right? You haven't been able to give him anything else. Give him this. Why can't you give him this? In the face of real evidence, 100%. You can't walk away from it. You both went into the room. All three of you went into the room and came out with one result. The two of you made him. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Why
Could have
can't
been the
you?
Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Why can't you not say it? Why? And even your sister, who's been your like wall, is telling you, girl, all he wants is the truth. And you're sitting there crying, and he is saying, just give me this. And what shook me is he's asking for so little.
Mm.
When he met with his father, he's the one who said, come give me a hug
Mm-hmm.
when the man was walking away.
Mm-hmm.
I have issues with this man. That is maybe for another show. He's the one who said, come hug me. He was the parent. What he wants is so little. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't want her to say, even I'm sorry I lied to you. All he wants her to say is, I acknowledge that what's in this piece of paper is true.
Yeah.
But why do you think, Tricia, that she couldn't like that's just
So
like
that
There
is
are
what,
deeper issues. There are deeper issues there, Teresa. I
yeah.
think that
So much.
looking at her age,
but
I think
what
that looking at her age, I think that where she was living at the time, there may even be, hey, I opened the door, there could have been sexual molestation, rape. I'm not saying that Rick did that to her, but I'm saying that there must have been something around these experiences for her
because
that
he
were
was
highly traumatic. And in some way, I don't know if it's denial, but I think that owning up to any of that truth, she feels that she may lose
I don't
who she has been before the world or whatever, you know.
I don't think she has. I'm gonna say it this way, Teresa.
yeah.
There are some things that we do not have the capacity
She doesn't have capacity. Yeah.
to hold,
Absolutely.
to be able to say out loud or receive.
Mhm.
There are people who have cancer diagnosis. They see the image in front of them. The doctor shows them. They're feeling all the symptoms. There's these women who fake pregnancies, right?
Mhm.
That believe they're pregnant,
Yeah.
even though it's clear that in their mind they're pregnant.
And
And
their tummies grow.
yep, and there is nothing you can tell them
Mhm.
that they will believe they're not pregnant in the face of reality. There are things that our mind does to be able to cope with certain things that we as humans in our rational, logical minds cannot understand. So if you ask me, how is it that this woman can, in the face of a DNA test, still deny that this man is the father? I can't tell you why she's doing it. I can tell you why it could. I can see how it could happen,
Okay.
and the how it could happen is this for me.
Thank you for
Yeah.
clarifying that because I was just very, very confused with that, you
Yeah.
know, that
And
part.
and then I think about it this way also. Potentially there were three men more or less around the same time. That is a stigma that even today, right? That's especially in communities of faith.
Yeah.
That's a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't and here's where I extend grace, but at the same time I say the fall. This is my takeaway. That sometimes as women we have been victimized and we are victims, but we need to be mindful that while we have been victimized, we don't become the villain to our children.
Yes.
Because that
Mhm.
particular moment,
Mm.
when all he needed was that, listen, and I am sure, as I was saying to someone I was watching, my husband was watching it, I said, I am sure the house and everything, he's taking care of them. He is
Mhm.
taking care of them. He wasn't saying, give me back, I want you. All he was saying is, give me that. And not being able to give that at that moment because you didn't have the capacity or whatever. I hope that she finds it in herself later on to ask for forgiveness and give it to him. I think that's when she moved from being the victim to now becoming like, hey, you couldn't give him just this one thing for your child. And I think that's the thing that I would like us to be mindful of. That
Do you think it might be control in I mean I'm just trying to, wrap my
Understand.
head around this, that not telling him who his father was will basically just keep, her as the only parent, in his life. I don't know. I just feel
I
like
don't. I
he's in a
didn't see that.
role.
I didn't see that
Okay.
because she's not the parent in his life. She literally isn't.
Right. She
No.
hasn't had contact
Remember,
with
they
him.
didn't
And
speak
the
right for 20 years.
Yeah, and the one who died wasn't a parent in his life.
Hmm.
So she's not.
Yeah.
She is not. She hasn't been the parent. What's a price? We haven't talked about Gertrude. That's another pink room,
Oh,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
that's a whole
We
other page.
haven't talked about Gertrude,
Yeah.
The adopted
right?
distant
At
relative.
64. Yeah.
We don't know all of what that was.
Yeah.
Who's Gertrude
Right.
and this, that? We don't know. And the fact that he does not ever say thank you, Gertrude.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Why?
Yeah. I
Well,
think
Right?
I think there was some deeper issues
So,
there.
so
Yeah.
there's so
Yeah.
much, and then I guess my takeaway is the same takeaway I had when I finished watching the video, and I started watching the social media response.
Mm.
The world was so ready to accept Mr. Hubbard's. I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. Like Bible,
Hmm.
without zero questions. How could you not remember? What? Without
Yeah.
even trying to
Right.
take this apart. So ready to grant him so much grace.
Right.
My takeaway is we don't know the whole story.
right.
Absolutely.
We do not know the whole story. And
Yeah.
whether
And
in
that's,
every
yeah.
person's life that we encounter, we do not know the whole story. And we
That's
need
right.
to deal with people from a position of grace and compassion. I was watching one show and somebody said compassion is I'm with you in what you care about. I'm
Mm.
walking with you. And in Spanish, it's easy, compasión,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not just I'm feeling with you. I'm walking with you in what you care about. When what you care about, the pain you're going through, the what you care about, it that's what I'm taking away.
Yeah. And in that regard, I think that then she did not extend compassion to her son.
No, she didn't.
After all these years of his suffering, she did not. So
No, she didn't.
yeah,
She
Teresa
Maybe
and
she doesn't know
Shonda,
how.
yeah.
Maybe she doesn't know how. My
She doesn't know
takeaway
how.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, she like Dr. T said, she doesn't have that
No
capacity, or
capacity. Right.
she's refusing. We don't know,
Yeah.
right? We're not in that space. But my takeaway would be definitely to our grannies, our mommies, our aunties, sisters, cousins. We have to, not have to. I'm asking that we learn to be honest,
Hmm.
start sitting and having real conversations and not
Yeah.
taking this stuff to the grave, because
Yeah.
it just continues to,
Yeah.
it's like pouring salt on an open wound.
Oh, yeah.
Please sit. You may not be proud of it. It may be embarrassing. It may be painful. It may trigger some things, hence the need to go to therapy. But if you could at some point in your life realize it puts people and situations into a better category, please have these conversations. It's too many generations where we don't talk. You
Yeah.
find out years later that Uncle Larry was really Daddy Larry.
Yeah.
We have to have real conversations, and it's hard because sometimes maybe those aunties or those sisters don't want to step on the toes of granny
Right.
or mommy to tell the truth. Like maybe Sandra does know the truth. She may know the truth, and she feels it's not in her place to tell it, right?
Mhm.
So I just say the takeaway is we have to talk in our communities.
Yeah.
We have to talk. It's communication.
Yeah. Excellent, Shonda. Teresa, yeah.
Oh, I'm good. Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Great,
So
great point, Shauna. Thank you.
yeah, great point. So we want to break the cycle, and it has to start with us. We can't wait for other people to do it, and it has to start with us, because we have to remember that we're the direct generation before. So we have to break it. So we have 4 topics that are probable topics. If you're still with us, I see a couple of you are still with us. Just put the letter in the chat. Next time in the pink room, your vote. What do you want us to talk about? Healing from mommy wounds. There are wounds there from mommies too. That would be A. B. Colonization's roots and aftermath, decolonizing our minds. C. The migrant crisis. I know in New York and Chicago, that's like the bread, everyday bread, right? But it's
Yes,
not
we
only
see
in your
that happen
backyard.
in Italy,
It's not
7
only in your backyard. Yeah. So you want us to talk about that, or do you want us to talk about relationship exit? Is it ever time to say goodbye? So if you could put in the chat, just type A, B, C, D. This is what I think you guys should talk about next time. And if you don't put it in the chat, go ahead and then when you rewatch the show, make sure that you just say A, B, C, D. And we will try to then make sure that we honor. Thank you. We honor the majority request. So A, B, C, D, whichever topic you want. I see one person here saying D.
Hey, you know that Dionne Warwick song came to mind. I don't even remember how it goes, but one of her songs. How do you know? You know which one I'm talking about?
No.
It's about the saying goodbye.
Dionne Warwick.
Yes, one of hers.
Yeah, beautiful voice. So we have a D. So unless we get on the other ones, D is the one we're going to go with. So if you have another one, please share it with us. I'm going to try to share here the documentary link so that you can watch it right after. Ladies, your final comments as we close out for tonight. This was a very good discussion. I want to thank you both, the three of you, because I believe that we touch. I've listened to a couple of people sharing, but I think we touch aspects that have been missing from the conversation when it comes to this topic. So, any final thoughts?
Empathy.
We love you, Teresa. We love you.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
Empathy, Teresa.
I'm gonna say my closing remark is empathy. I think that trait that makes us human is really what will save our society, will end these cycles. I wouldn't be here without the empathy that I've received from other women, men, just I have had the blessing of having human beings that have had empathy for my life experiences, and I just hope that I can leave that as well to be able to bless others, but empathy, and thank you ladies for your constant empathy in my life. I truly appreciate it, and it blesses me greatly.
Thank you. And you bless us, Teresa, every single time.
Always.
So we're going to close out on Teresa's empathy. I think that that's the message for tonight. Empathy, compassion, being able to walk in our truth. We can't run away from truth. Truth. What the Bible says, the truth will make you free.
Yeah.
As long as we don't tell the truth or live in the truth, we'll forever be wrapped up, right? I'm living in secrecy. So we're going to leave. We're leaving with you that slide. Please let us know, A, B, C, or D, what's the next topic that you would like us to talk about. You can also email us, pinkroom@4rwi.org, or go on one of our social media platforms and just say topic for Pink Room. But these are the 4 topics, and we leave you tonight. And we thank you for taking the time for being with us. And most importantly, we ask you to share this video with others. Sometimes all it takes to have a conversation is use this as a platform so that you can open up that conversation. Thank you very much, co-hostesses. Thank you so much. Great having you.
And we'll see you next time in the Pink Room. The Pink Room is a produced resource of For Real Women International, Inc., a non-profit organization with headquarters in New York and affiliates in the United States, Latin America, and the Caribbean. The views expressed here by hostesses and guests do not necessarily represent the philosophy of For Real Women International, its affiliates, members, and board of directors.